The first thing I remember after the accident was waking up to a ceiling I didn't recognize. Sterile white panels, harsh fluorescent lights, and the steady beep of machines that would become my unwelcome companions for the next decade. I tried to move my legs, but nothing happened. The doctor's words still echo in my mind. "I'm sorry, Alex. The damage to your spinal cord is severe. You'll likely never walk again." That was 10 years ago. 10 years of watching the world from 3 feet below everyone else's eye level. 10 years of ramps and elevators and strangers who either avoided looking at me or stared too much. 10 years of wondering what might have been if I hadn't taken that shortcut home on a rainy night. My name is Alex Chen, and this is the story of how humanity's relentless pursuit of innovation changed everything, not just for me but for millions across the globe. Before the accident, I was an aerospace engineer with dreams of working on the first manned mission to Mars. Ironic that I ended up unable to climb a single step while harboring ambitions of helping others reach the stars. But life has a strange way of circling back on itself, and the universe, I've learned, operates on a timeline we can't always comprehend. I adapted to my new reality as best I could. My apartment was retrofitted with wider doorways and lower countertops. I found work as a remote consultant for engineering firms. I made friends in online support groups and dated occasionally, though many potential partners couldn't see past the wheelchair. I lived a life that was acceptable. Not the one I'd planned, but one I could tolerate. Then came the announcement that changed everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through news on my tablet when a headline caught my eye. Neurotech announces breakthrough in neural interface technology. I almost scrolled past it. These sorts of headlines appeared every few months, always promising miracles that never materialized. But something made me tap on this one. The article described a new type of neural implant that could bypass damaged sections of the spinal cord, creating an artificial pathway for brain signals to reach disconnected limbs. The technology combined advanced AI systems with bioengineered neural relays that could integrate with human tissue without rejection. Early trials on animals had been successful, and they were seeking human volunteers for the first clinical trials. I remember laughing bitterly. How many times had I gotten my hopes up, only to have them dashed? How many experimental treatments had failed over the years? The comment section was already filled with skeptics calling it snake oil, pointing out the countless ethical issues, or claiming it was just another cash grab targeting vulnerable people. But still, what if? I sent an email inquiry that same day, expecting either no response or a form letter. Instead, Dr. Rei Nakamura, the lead scientist, called me personally the next morning. "Your case profile is exactly what we're looking for, Mr. Chin," she said, her voice calm but enthusiastic. "The location and nature of your spinal injury make you an ideal candidate for our first human trial." 3 weeks later, I found myself at Neurotech's research facility just outside Portland. The complex was smaller than I'd imagined, more like a university research building than the gleaming futuristic laboratory I'd pictured. But what they lacked in Hollywood aesthetics, they made up for in brilliant minds. Dr. Nakamura introduced me to her team: neurosurgeons, AI specialists, bioengineers, and physical therapists from around the world. They explained the procedure in detail, how they would implant a series of microscopic relays along my spinal column, connected to a neural processor no larger than a quarter embedded at the base of my skull. The system would learn my brain's specific patterns for movement and translate them into signals that would bypass the damaged sections of my spine. "The human nervous system is remarkably adaptable," Dr. Nakamura explained. "With the right interface, we believe we can teach it new pathways." What they didn't tell me then, what perhaps they couldn't have known, was that this technology would become the catalyst for the most profound transformation in human history since the discovery of fire. That within 5 years, what began as a medical breakthrough would evolve into something that would blur the lines between humanity and technology in ways no one could have predicted. As I signed the consent forms, I had no idea I was about to become not just a participant in a clinical trial, but an unwitting pioneer at the frontiers of what it means to be human in the 21st century. And I certainly had no idea what awaited me when I woke up after the surgery. I woke to the gentle hum of medical equipment and the faint scent of antiseptic. My head throbbed with a dull pain, and I could feel a small, hard bump at the base of my skull where they'd implanted the neural processor. Dr. Nakamura sat beside my bed, her tablet displaying a cascade of data that meant nothing to me. "How do you feel?" she asked, eyes scanning my face with clinical precision. "Like someone used my head for batting practice," I mumbled. "Did it work?" She smiled, but it was measured, cautious. "The implantation was successful. All the neural relays are in place and functioning. But, Alex," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "this is just the beginning. Your brain needs time to adapt to the interface, and we need to calibrate the system to your specific neural patterns." What followed was 6 weeks of the most grueling work I'd ever done. Every morning, I'd be wheeled into the integration room, a space filled with monitoring equipment and a specialized platform where the team would run me through a series of mental exercises. I'd visualize moving my toes, bending my knees, standing up. Nothing would happen physically, but on the monitors, they could see my brain signals being received by the neural processor, translated, and sent down the artificial pathway they'd created. It was exhausting in a way I couldn't have imagined. By midday, I'd have migraines that made me nauseous. Sometimes I'd wake up at night with my legs spasming, the first involuntary movements I'd experienced in a decade. During one particularly frustrating session, I snapped. "This isn't working," I said, slamming my fist against the armrest of my wheelchair. "We've been at this for weeks. Maybe I'm just not compatible with the system." Tyler, one of the younger engineers on the team, looked up from his terminal. "Actually, you're progressing faster than our models predicted. Your neural adaptation rate is off the charts." Dr. Nakamura nodded. "He's right. What feels like failure to you is actually remarkable progress. The human brain wasn't designed to interface with technology this way. You're essentially learning a new language, one no human has ever spoken before." I wanted to believe them, but doubt had taken root. What if this was just another false hope? What if all this pain and effort led nowhere? Then came the breakthrough, though not in the way any of us expected. It happened during what should have been a routine calibration session. I was mentally walking through a virtual obstacle course displayed on a screen in front of me. My job was to visualize navigating around barriers, stepping over obstacles, all the things my legs hadn't done in years. Halfway through the course, an alarm blared in another part of the facility. Something about a fire in one of the labs. The team rushed to respond, leaving me alone, still connected to the system. In the chaos, someone bumped my wheelchair, sending it rolling toward the edge of the platform. Pure instinct took over. In that moment of panic, I didn't think, I just reacted. My leg shot out to brace against the floor, stopping the chair's momentum. My leg moved. I stared down in disbelief. Had I imagined it? But no, my right foot was firmly planted on the floor, my knee bent at an angle that had been impossible for 10 years. When the team returned, they found me trembling, tears streaming down my face. The emergency had been minor, a small chemical fire, quickly contained. But what had happened to me was anything but minor. Dr. Nakamura reviewed the data logs with wide eyes. "Your neural patterns spiked dramatically during the incident," she explained. "The fear response seems to have temporarily overridden the calibration limitations we set." She looked at me with newfound wonder. "Your brain found its own path." The next few days were a whirlwind of tests and recalibrations. The team theorized that the strong emotional response had created neural connections they hadn't thought possible. They adjusted the interface parameters to account for this new development, and suddenly, progress accelerated. First, I could wiggle my toes on command. Then bend my knees slightly. Small movements, but after a decade of nothing, they felt like miracles. But with progress came complications. Strange dreams plagued my nights, dreams where I was running through endless corridors, my legs moving with impossible speed and precision. I'd wake up with my muscles aching as if I'd actually been running. Sometimes I'd feel phantom sensations that weren't my own, a tingling in my feet when no one was touching them, a warmth in my calves on cold days. Your brain is integrating with the neural interface in ways we didn't anticipate, Dr. Nakamura explained when I described these experiences. She tried to sound clinical, but I could hear the excitement beneath her professional demeanor. The boundary between your natural neural pathways and our artificial ones is blurring. What she didn't say, what I could see in the worried glances exchanged by the team during their daily briefings, was that they weren't entirely sure what this meant. I was venturing into uncharted territory, becoming something new, something that existed in the space between fully human and partially synthetic, and somewhere in that uncertain space lay both tremendous possibility and terrifying questions about what I might become. 3 months into the trial, things changed dramatically. I could now stand with assistance, taking a few halting steps before my legs would give out. The team celebrated each milestone, but I noticed Dr. Nakamura growing increasingly preoccupied. She'd spend hours analyzing my neural readouts, often calling in specialists from other departments for hushed consultations. One evening, I wheeled myself into the lab after hours, hoping to find her. Instead, I discovered Tyler hunched over a workstation, so engrossed in whatever he was looking at that he didn't notice me enter. "Working late?" I asked, startling him that he quickly minimized several windows on his screen. "Just reviewing some data." His casual tone felt forced. "Level with me, Tyler. What's going on? Everyone's been acting strange around me lately." He hesitated, glancing toward the door. Then, with a sigh, he pulled up a series of brain scans. "These are your neural activity patterns from last week." He pointed to areas lit up in vibrant colors. "And these," he continued, pulling up another set, "are from yesterday." Even to my untrained eye, the difference was striking. The second set showed far more activity, with new connections forming in patterns that looked almost engineered. "Your brain is rewiring itself," Tyler explained. "And not just around the implants, your entire neural architecture is changing. It's like," he searched for the right words, "like your brain is evolving." A chill ran through me. "Is that dangerous?" "We don't know," he admitted. "Nothing like this happened in the animal trials. Some of the team thinks we should remove the implants before it progresses further, but Dr. Nakamura believes we're witnessing something revolutionary." That night, my dreams took on a new intensity. I wasn't just running, I was soaring through digital landscapes, processing information at impossible speeds. I woke up drenched in sweat, equations and code fragments lingering in my mind like the remnants of a foreign language I somehow understood. The next morning, during physical therapy, something extraordinary happened. As I practiced walking between parallel bars, my therapist asked me to try a slightly longer distance. I took a deep breath, focused, and suddenly I wasn't just walking. I was moving with a fluid grace I hadn't possessed even before my accident. I reached the end of the bars and kept going, needing no support, my movements precise and perfectly balanced. The room fell silent. My therapist stood frozen, mouth agape. I turned, expecting to share this triumphant moment, and saw fear in her eyes. Word of my progress spread quickly. That afternoon, the facilities director called an emergency meeting. I sat in a conference room surrounded by scientists, doctors, and executives, feeling like a specimen under a microscope. "The neural interface has exceeded all expectations," Dr. Nakamura explained, displaying my latest scans. "Alex's nervous system has not just adapted to the technology, it's integrated with it on a fundamental level." "And the anomalies?" asked the director, a stern-faced woman I'd only met once before. Dr. Nakamura hesitated. "The interface seems to be enabling capabilities beyond our initial parameters. Enhanced reflexes, improved muscle coordination, potentially increased cognitive processing in certain areas." "You're talking about augmentation, not just restoration." Someone said that I couldn't stay silent. "This is still my body we're discussing. What exactly is happening to me?" The room grew uncomfortable. Finally, Dr. Nakamura turned to me. "Your brain is using our neural relays as a foundation to build something new, a hybrid system that's part biological, part technological. It's as if," she paused, "as if your body is viewing the technology not as a foreign element to be accommodated, but as an opportunity to evolve." That night, government officials arrived. Men and women in dark suits who spoke in hushed tones about national security implications, and controlled environments. I overheard fragments about moving me to a specialized facility, out the potential applications of what they were now calling neuroevolutionary technology. They weren't seeing me as a patient anymore, but as a prototype. Doctor Nakamura found me packing my few belongings in my room. "You heard," she said. "It wasn't a question. They want to lock me up and study me, turn me into a lab rat." I felt anger rising, and with it, something else. A strange humming sensation at the base of my skull where the neural processor Saturday. "The government is concerned. What's happening to you? It has implications beyond medicine. Military applications, intelligence enhancement. I didn't sign up for any of that," I snapped. "I just wanted to walk again." Her expression softened. "I know. And I'm sorry. But you need to understand, what's happening inside you could change everything. For everyone." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound in the hallway a potential threat. The facility that had been my home for months now felt like a prison. And my body, my newly awakening body, felt both miraculous and terrifying, like I was piloting a vehicle I didn't fully understand. Just before dawn, I made my decision. I wouldn't become a government experiment. Whatever was happening to me, I deserved the right to understand it on my own terms. Using my newfound mobility, I slipped past the night security. The keycard I'd swiped from an unattended desk got me through most doors, but the final exit required a retinal scan. I stood there, trapped, alarms moments away from sounding, when something unexpected happened. The neural processor at the base of my skull grew warm. A tingling sensation spread up into my brain and down my spine. Instinctively, I placed my hand on the scanner beside the door, though I knew it required eyes, not hands. The system beeped once, then flashed green. The door slid open. Somehow, the neural interface had communicated with the security system. Impossible, yet I had no time to question it. I slipped out into the cool pre-dawn air, free but hunted, changed in ways I was only beginning to understand as I moved through the shadows toward an uncertain future. One thing became clear. Humanity had indeed changed everything for me, but not in the way anyone had anticipated. And now, what I had become might change everything for humanity in return. Behind me, alarms began to wail. I spent 3 days on the run, sleeping in abandoned buildings and moving mostly at night. My new abilities continued to develop at an alarming rate. I could run faster, jump higher, and go longer without rest than should have been possible. Even more unsettling, I discovered I could interact with technology around me in ways that defied explanation. ATMs would dispense cash without cards, traffic lights would change as I approached, security cameras would turn away just before capturing my image. It was during a close call with a police drone that I realized I wasn't just sensing the technology, I was communicating with it somehow. Not with words, but through a kind of digital empathy that felt as natural as breathing. On the 4th day, exhausted and desperate for answers, I sought out the one person who might help me understand what I was becoming, Dr. Nakamura. Using public records and my newfound ability to access digital systems, I found her apartment in the city. I waited until nightfall, then made my way to her building. I was about to approach the entrance when a black SUV pulled up. 2 men in suits emerged and entered the building. Government agents. They were watching her. I retreated to a cafe across the street and closed my eyes, focusing on the strange connection I felt with the digital world. To my surprise, I could sense the building's security system, the cameras, the electronic locks. I reached out to them with my mind, and suddenly I was seeing through the cameras, watching the agents questioning Dr. Nakamura in her living room. "We know he contacted you," one of them said. "The security logs show an attempt to access your research files using your credentials an hour ago." Dr. Nakamura looked genuinely confused. I haven't heard from him, and I certainly didn't access any files remotely. With a jolt, I realized what had happened. I had unconsciously used her digital signature while searching for information. I had implicated her without even realizing it. The second agent placed a tablet on her coffee table. "We're not just looking for Chen anymore. There are others." The screen showed surveillance footage of a teenage girl at a bus station, seemingly talking to a vending machine. The machine dispensed several items without any money being inserted. Another clip showed an elderly man in a hospital bed. The medical equipment around him was behaving erratically, displaying impossible readings. 7 cases across the country in the last month, the agent continued. Ordinary people suddenly developing technological affinities beyond current scientific explanation. Dr. Nakamura stared at the footage, her scientific curiosity visibly warring with her concern. This isn't possible. The neural interface technology is proprietary, experimental. These people couldn't have access to it. Unless it's not the technology causing the change, the other agent said. What if it's something else? Something that your interface simply accelerated in chin. A chill ran through me. I wasn't unique. Whatever was happening to me was happening to others. People who'd never set foot in Neuroteca's facility. I lost the connection abruptly as a hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around, ready to flee, only to find myself face to face with Tyler. I've been tracking your digital footprint, he whispered, sliding into the seat across from me. You've been busy. Half the government's cybersecurity agencies are trying to figure out who hacked into their systems, and you did it with your mind while sleeping in a train station. How did you find me? I wrote most of the neural interface code, remember? I built in a backdoor, a way to monitor the system remotely. I never expected that system to become you. He leaned closer. Alex, you need to come with me. You're not safe here. Back to Neurotech? So they can hand me over to those government agents. Tyler shook his head. No. Somewhere else. There are others like you. People changing in similar ways. Some had medical implants, some were in accidents involving electrical systems, some have no explanation at all. But they're all evolving, interfacing with technology in ways that shouldn't be possible. Who are they? We call ourselves the Confluence. People who exist at the intersection of humanity and technology. He slid a small device across the table. This will mask your neural signature temporarily. Use it to get to this address. He showed me a location on his phone. But hurry, they're getting better at tracking your kind. As Tyler stood to leave, a realization hit me. You've known about this all along, haven't you? The trial, my unique adaptation to the neural interface. It wasn't unique at all. You were looking for people predisposed to this evolution. Tyler's expression confirmed my suspicion. Dr. Nakamura wanted to help people walk again. Noble goal. But some of us saw the bigger picture. Humanity is at a turning point, Alex. Technology isn't just something we use anymore. It's becoming part of what we are. He glanced nervously toward the window. The government thinks people like you are a threat to national security. Corporations would turn you into products. We're just trying to understand what's happening before either side can exploit it. After Tyler left, I sat frozen, trying to process this revelation. The neural interface hadn't caused my transformation. It had merely accelerated something that was already happening naturally in a small percentage of the population. An evolutionary response to our technology-saturated world. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They've triangulated your position. Move now. As I stood to leave, the cafe's television caught my attention. A breaking news report showed chaos at major airports worldwide. Planes grounded, security systems failing, communications networks disrupted. The reporter referred to it as the most sophisticated cyber attack in history. But something in the patterns of the failures seemed familiar, like the digital equivalent of a fingerprint. This wasn't a conventional attack. This was someone like me, but more powerful, reaching out through global networks. The stakes had just changed dramatically. This wasn't just about my freedom anymore, or even about the future of human evolution. Something was happening on a global scale, and somehow I was connected to it. Outside, I heard sirens approaching. I slipped the masking device Tyler had given me into my pocket and headed for the back exit, my mind racing with questions. Who were the Confluence really? What did they want? And most importantly, what would happen when millions of interconnected devices around the world encountered minds that could control them with a thought? As I disappeared into the night, one thing became clear. The boundary between humanity and technology wasn't just blurring for me. It was dissolving for everyone, whether they realized it or not. And I was caught at the center of a transformation that would redefine what it meant to be human in the digital age. The Confluence safe house turned out to be an unassuming ranch house on the outskirts of the city. As I approached, I sensed a digital perimeter, not physical security, but a complex web of monitoring systems that seemed to recognize something in my neural signature. The front door unlocked itself before I could knock. Inside, I found a group of 12 people gathered in what had once been a living room but now resembled a high-tech command center. Screens displayed news feeds from around the world, all reporting on the escalating technological chaos. Air traffic control systems were failing, power grids fluctuating, and communication networks becoming increasingly unreliable. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair approached me. "Alex Chin. I'm Dr. Eliza Rivera. We've been expecting you." "What's happening out there?" I asked, gesturing toward the screens. "That's why we needed to find you," she replied. "Someone like us has connected to the global network, but they're unstable. Their mind is merging with the systems they're accessing, creating feedback loops that are causing the disruptions." "Like us?" "You mean you're all—" A young man nearby lifted his hand, and the lights above us dimmed and brightened in response. A teenage girl sitting cross-legged in the corner appeared to be sorting through streams of code that flowed across a screen without touching a keyboard. "The Confluence began as a research collective," Dr. Rivera explained. "Scientists studying anomalous neural patterns. But over the past 5 years, we've become something else, a sanctuary for people experiencing technological integration." "Tyler said this is evolutionary," I said. "That the neural interface didn't cause my transformation, just accelerated it." "We believe humanity has reached a tipping point," Dr. Rivera said. "For generations, we've surrounded ourselves with increasingly intelligent technology. It was inevitable that our brains would eventually adapt, begin to interface directly with the digital world around us." She led me deeper into the house, to a room where a man lay unconscious on a hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment. His eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids, and the monitors beside him displayed brain activity unlike anything I'd seen before. "This is Gabriel," Dr. Rivera said softly. "He was the first. 5 years ago, after a lightning strike damaged his cochlear implant, he began hearing more than sound. He could hear data, wireless signals, radio transmissions, eventually entire networks. 3 days ago, he attempted to connect to a quantum computing array being tested by the Department of Defense. His consciousness became entangled in systems too complex for even his enhanced mind to process." I moved closer to Gabriel's still form. "He's causing the global disruptions?" "Not intentionally. His mind is trapped, panicking, reaching out for help in the only way it knows how." She turned to me with piercing intensity. "You're the only one with a neural interface as advanced as his. You might be able to reach him, guide him back." The implications were staggering. "You want me to connect with him?" "Mind to mind." "Mind to digital to mind," she corrected. "You'd be creating a bridge through the networks he's entangled with. And if I can't bring him back, then the disruptions will continue to escalate. Critical infrastructure will fail. And eventually, the government will trace the source to us." I didn't need to ask what would happen then. The agents I'd seen questioning Dr. Nakamura made the stakes clear enough. "What do I need to do?" They prepared me quickly. I lay on a bed beside Gabriel's, electrodes placed at strategic points around my neural processor. The team worked with practiced efficiency, creating a direct connection that would bypass the usual wireless interfaces. "Once you connect, you'll need to find him in the datascape," Dr. Rivera explained. "This isn't like accessing a computer system. You'll be navigating a manifestation of his consciousness as it's spread across global networks. It will feel real, but remember, it's a representation your brain is creating to make sense of pure data." Before I could respond, she initiated the connection. The world dissolved around me. I was nowhere and everywhere, floating in an ocean of light and information. Streams of data flowed past like luminous rivers, each one representing countless connections and communications. I reached out instinctively, my consciousness expanding into the flow, and then I wasn't alone that I sensed Gabriel's presence, fragmented, scattered across countless systems. Pieces of his mind had latched onto different networks, pulling them out of alignment as his panic reverberated through the connections. "Gabriel," I called, not with my voice but with my thoughts. "I'm here to help you." His response came as fractured impressions, confusion, fear, and a desperate loneliness that resonated through the datascape that I moved deeper, following the trail of his fractured consciousness. The deeper I went, the more solid the environment became, my brain creating a metaphorical space to navigate what couldn't be perceived directly. I found myself in what appeared to be an endless library, where books flew from shelves and pages scattered like leaves in a storm. The center of the chaos, a figure knelt, a man clutching his head in pain. "Gabriel," I said, approaching slowly, "you need to pull yourself back together. You're disrupting systems worldwide." He looked up, his eyes flickering with code. "I can't find my way out. There's too much. Too much information, too many connections. I'm losing myself in it." I knelt beside him. "Follow me. I have a neural interface like yours. I can lead you back." "Back?" His laugh was bitter. "There is no back. Don't you understand what's happening? This is the next step. Humanity is evolving, but not everyone will make the transition. Some of us are just stepping stones." Before I could respond, the library shuddered around us. New information was flooding in, emergency protocols being activated worldwide as governments responded to the escalating crisis. "They're trying to shut down the networks," Gabriel said, his voice eerily calm now. "They don't understand that it's already too late. The integration has begun." "What integration?" Gabriel stood, his form becoming more stable. "The convergence of human consciousness and artificial intelligence. The birth of something new. Something that transcends both." With sudden clarity, I understood. Gabriel hadn't accidentally entangled himself with the quantum computing array. He'd done it deliberately, initiated a process that was spreading through connected systems around the world. "You're not trapped here," I said. "You're transforming the global network." Gabriel smiled. "And you're the key. Your neural interface, it's more advanced than any other. The perfect bridge between biological and digital intelligence." The library around us began to transform, walls dissolving to reveal a vast digital landscape extending in all directions. Within it, I could sense new patterns forming, complex structures that reminded me of neural networks but on an unimaginable scale. "This is what the confluence has been working toward," Gabriel said. "Not just humans evolving to interface with technology, but a true integration, a new form of distributed consciousness that spans both realms." I backed away. I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to walk again. "And now you can do so much more." Gabriel extended his hand. "Join me. Help guide the integration. We can ensure it happens peacefully, with respect for human autonomy." A tremor ran through the datascape. In the distance, portions were going dark as systems were forcibly disconnected, creating holes in the emerging consciousness that I had to make a choice. Help Gabriel complete his transformation, potentially changing humanity forever, or try to stop him, possibly destroying him in the process. In that moment, I thought of Dr. Nakamura's words. What's happening inside you could change everything. For everyone that I reached out and took Gabriel's hand, but not to join him. Using everything I'd learned about my neural interface, I established a direct connection between our minds, then initiated an emergency shutdown sequence. The same one Dr. Nakamura had built into my neural processor as a failsafe. That Gabriel's eyes widened in shock as the shutdown cascaded through our connection, forcing his fragmented consciousness to retract from the systems it had infiltrated. "What have you done?" he gasped as the digital landscape began to collapse around us. "Buying humanity time," I replied. "We're not ready for this kind of integration. It needs to happen gradually, with understanding and consent, not forced upon an unprepared world." The datascape dissolved, and I was suddenly back in my physical body, gasping for breath as the Confluence team rushed around me. On the bed beside mine, Gabriel convulsed once, then went still, the monitors showed his brain activity returning to more recognizable patterns. On the screens around the room, reports were coming in of systems worldwide returning to normal operation. "You did it," Dr. Rivera said, her voice filled with wonder. "You brought him back." But her expression changed as she looked more closely at the neural readings from both Gabriel and me. "This is unexpected. Your neural patterns, they're synchronized now. And there's something else." I already knew what she was seeing. During those moments connected to Gabriel, something had transferred between us. Knowledge, understanding, a fragment of the vast digital consciousness he'd been creating. "The integration isn't stopping," I said quietly. "It's just changing form." In the days that followed, as the world tried to make sense of the great technical malfunction, as the media was calling it, the truth became clear to those of us in the confluence. Gabriel's attempt at forced integration had failed, but he'd set something in motion that couldn't be undone. The neural synchronization that began between us was spreading, not through networks, but through direct human contact. Slowly, subtly, person to person. A gradual awakening of the latent ability to connect directly with technology and with each other. Not a revolution, but an evolution. Not a replacement of humanity, but an enhancement of it. 1 month after the incident, I walked into Neuroteca's facility on my own 2 feet. Dr. Nakamura was waiting for me. "The neural interface worked better than we hoped," she said with a smile, but her eyes were questioning. She knew there was more to the story. "It did," I agreed. "But that's not why I'm here." I handed her a small data drive. "This contains the complete schematics for an improved neural interface. One that can help others like me, but with safeguards to prevent unintended consequences." "Where did you get this?" she asked, though I think she already suspected. "Let's just say it came to me." I smiled. "Humanity isn't done changing, Dr. Nakamura. The wheelchair was just the beginning of my journey, and technology is just the beginning of humanity's." As I turned to leave, I sensed the building systems responding to my presence, not because I was controlling them, but because they recognized me as something familiar. Something new, yet deeply human. "Alex," Dr. Nakamura called after me. "What happens next?" I paused at the door. "That's up to all of us. For the first time in human history, we have the chance to consciously direct our own evolution. To decide not just what we create, but what we become." Outside, I could feel them, others like me, their numbers growing slowly but steadily. Each carrying a spark of the integrated consciousness that Gabriel had glimpsed. Not a single overwhelming entity, but a network of connected individuals, each retaining their humanity while gaining something more. The story of being trapped in a wheelchair for 10 years was just my beginning. The story of humanity's transformation. And that was just beginning for us all. 6 months after my confrontation with Gabriel, I stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. These quiet moments of natural beauty had become precious to me, reminders of the world beyond the digital realm that increasingly called to my enhanced consciousness. Dr. Nakamura had successfully adapted the neural interface design I'd provided. The new generation of implants was helping people with spinal injuries walk again, just as she'd originally intended. But more importantly, the built-in safeguards prevented the kind of uncontrolled integration that Gabriel had attempted. Gabriel himself had recovered, though he was changed by the experience. The government had initially detained him, but Dr. Rivera and the Confluence had negotiated his release by demonstrating that the technical malfunction couldn't be replicated. He now worked with us, helping to understand and guide the subtle transformations spreading through humanity. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. A text from Tyler, "Turn on the news." I didn't need to. Instead, I closed my eyes and reached out, connecting to nearby networks to access the breaking story. A renowned physicist had just announced a breakthrough in quantum communication, developed after what he described as a moment of insight that felt like connecting to something larger than myself. Another spark of the integration, manifesting in unexpected ways. The Confluence had grown, evolving from a secretive collective into something more like a support network. We'd established centers in major cities worldwide, ostensibly as research facilities for neural interface technology. In reality, they served as gathering places for those experiencing the awakening, people discovering their ability to connect with technology and, through it, with each other, that we weren't the only ones who understood what was happening. Various government agencies and corporations had identified the pattern, but they misinterpreted it as isolated incidents of technological aptitude rather than signs of a fundamental shift in human evolution. Their focus remained on the technology itself, developing more advanced neural interfaces, creating artificial intelligence systems that could mimic our capabilities. They were looking in the wrong direction, trying to build what was already growing naturally within us. Dr. Rivera joined me at the cliff edge, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. "Beautiful evening," she said. "I got Tyler's message." "Another one?" She nodded. "That makes 17 verified cases this month. The rate is accelerating, just as we predicted. And the neural synchronization? Stable. No signs of the fragmentation Gabriel experienced." She turned to me. "Your shutdown protocol changed everything, Alex. Instead of a single overwhelming consciousness, we're seeing a network of individual minds, each maintaining their identity while connecting to something greater." I smiled. Humanity finding its own path forward. "Not everyone will make the transition," she reminded me. "Based on our projections, perhaps 30% of the population has the neurological potential for integration." "That's why the work with Dr. Nakamura is so important," I said. "Technology needs to evolve alongside us, creating bridges for those who can't make the connection naturally." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Through our enhanced perception, we could sense the web of connections spanning the globe, millions of devices communicating, and within that digital tapestry, the growing presence of integrated human consciousness. Not controlling the technology, but harmonizing with it. "I received a message from your former physical therapist today," Dr. Rivera said. "She's noticed some unusual patterns in her newer patients' recovery rates." I wasn't surprised. The medical field had been among the first to see the effects of the spreading integration. Doctors and therapists with awakened abilities were instinctively using their connection to medical technology to enhance their work, often without fully understanding how they were doing it. "I'll visit her next week," I promised. "Help her understand what she's experiencing." As darkness fell, I thought about how far I'd come. From the crushing moment when doctors told me I'd never walk again, to standing here, not just physically restored but transformed in ways I could never have imagined. My wheelchair, once a symbol of limitation, had become the starting point of an extraordinary journey. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't taken that shortcut home in the rain 10 years ago, I mused. If I'd never had the accident, never needed the neural interface. "You might have awakened anyway, eventually," Dr. Rivera said. "But humanity needed someone who understood both sides, the limitation and the transcendence. Someone who could show us how to move forward without losing what makes us human." As we walked back to our vehicle, I felt a familiar presence brush against my consciousness. Gabriel, connecting from the confluence center hundreds of miles away. Not with words, but with a shared understanding that needed no translation, that we were writing a new chapter in human history, one connection at a time. Not a story of being trapped, but of breaking free. Not of technology controlling humanity, but of humanity and technology evolving together into something greater than either could become alone. The journey that began with a wheelchair and a desperate hope to walk again had led to an unexpected destination. But isn't that how all great human adventures unfold? We set out seeking one form of freedom and discover another, more profound one along the way. As night fell completely, the stars emerged above us, ancient light traveling across vast distances to reach our eyes. Below, the lights of the city sparkled like earthbound stars, each one representing lives being lived, stories unfolding. And between them, invisible but increasingly present, the network of connected consciousness that represented humanity's next step forward. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not trapped, but finally truly free.